Hello, welcome to another edition of Inside the Birds TV with Jeff Mosher and Adam Kaplan, presented, of course, by our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. Now, today we're deviating from the norm. We're very fortunate to have a fellow media celebrity on with us, way more popular than Adam and I. It is John Clark from NBC Sports Philly, NBC 10. Any other NBCs, John, that we have not affiliated with you?
Well, you got
covered
USA
all.
You got all the NBC properties. Yes.
Telemundo. Do you do any Telemundo work?
See.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you. We're going to do this differently, as we talked about. Less of a Q&A for you and more about a roundtable discussion, or in this case, a square screen discussion about the state of the Philadelphia Eagles, what's going on with them, and then we're going to dive into your career ascent a little bit and probably embarrass you with some questions that make you talk about yourself. Are you all right with that?
Yeah, as long as it's not a career descent.
No, we've been through that. You haven't gone through that yet.
You guys are the best.
Oh, yeah. No, it's been fun. It's been good to have you. And I know I speak on Adam's behalf here as well. You've been doing a great job, man. You've been really taking over there and breaking news on all of the sports teams. So that actually is where I wanted to start with you before we get into the Eagles, Sean. I mean, you're a busy guy. It's not uncommon for you to be tweeting out, some kind of source news about the Eagles, the Flyers, the Phillies, or the Sixers. So you've become pretty busy. It's got to be a lot to juggle.
Well, as you guys know, because you guys have taken your expertise and your inside knowledge to a different level with this long form format, which is awesome. We all are just trying to keep jobs in this industry now. And so it used to be just doing the television for me. But now you got to be on all the platforms, writing, digital, and then, of course, social media, because every kid I run into now, they don't say, hey, I watch you on NBC 10. They say, hey, I follow you on Instagram. So I'm like, okay, this is the future of where young people are getting their news on social media. So you got to keep up or it's going to run you over.
I'm ready to get on TikTok. I don't know, because I hear like millions of people are on TikTok. Adam, I think we have an Inside the Birds TikTok account that we haven't really done anything with, like just in case. But if we have to start dancing or using auto-tune to break news, then I think I'm out. It might just be time for me to like walk off into the sunset.
Well, it's funny because we have an account, we get a summary, but I don't know. I didn't know we had anything up there. So that's TikTok. But
well, if you want to show some moves and audition for TikTok right now, we could open that up.
No. You're Johnny on the spot for this, not us. All right?
Right. So, John, we'll just start a little bit of Eagles discussion here. You've covered the team for many, many years. The not only the coaching search, but the Doug Peterson era, and you were around for the Chip Kelly era. Give us an outline of the coaches you've covered, and some of the unique situations that you saw in your time covering the team.
Well, I think for the most part, the Eagles and Jeff Lurie and Howie Roseman and Joe Banner, they have gotten their head coaching hires right. I mean, to find Andy Reid, who's going to be one of the greatest coaches in NFL history, was a great find. And then, of course, Chip Kelly, that first night of Chip Kelly, the first half, everybody was like, wow, this is going to revolutionize the NFL. I remember that distinctly in Washington. And then not so much. I mean, he was 10-6 his first 2 years, so maybe a good coach for a year or two, but then letting him have personnel, he just gutted the team. And then it wasn't all about culture. It was basically about hired guns. So, you saw that. And then they went with, and a lot of people made fun of Jeff Lurie for the emotional intelligence, but that's exactly what Doug Peterson brought to the team, a connection with the players. And I do think in today's NFL, you need to have that. Like you see Mike Tomlin has that with his players. You see Andy Reid has that. And Bruce Arians, my goodness, now it's come out. It's not Bill Belichick's, what was his slogan? No days off, or something like that. And Arians is like, yeah, Tom, don't practice this day. Gronk, don't practice this day. So you have to have a connection with your players. And so I think for the most part, we saw that with Chip Kelly where it didn't work. And then with Doug Peterson, it did. And hopefully with Nick Sirianni, it will as well. We don't know.
Isn't it difficult? Like, I constantly, we get the same questions as you, as far as, doesn't Jeffrey deserve kind of the benefit of the doubt? Even if the franchise seems low now, how often have the Eagles had back-to-back losing years, which is, not in quite a while. But I often find myself not trying to fall victim to the idea that, past success automatically equates to future success. Because in many workplaces it does, but also in sports it doesn't. Use Andy Reid as an example. He was a great coach here. Then he had some really down times the last few years. He got fired. Then he was successful. Other coaches like Mike McCarthy won a Super Bowl, did well after that, went downhill. Now it's yet to be seen what's going to happen in Dallas, but he didn't have a great first year. So I'm kind of caught between not knowing. Like, I do want to give the franchise the benefit of the doubt for what they've proven, but I don't think it's necessarily also a cemented stamp that everything's always going to be okay.
No, I agree. And I think, once again, Tom Brady is showing it is all about the quarterback. Most important position in sports. I mean, Tom Brady leaves the Patriots. You saw what happened to them. And then Tom Brady goes to the Bucs in a pandemic with no real mini camps or off season, and they win the Super Bowl. Right. And it's all about protecting the quarterback, as you saw with Patrick Mahomes. So I think that's the thing the Eagles have to get figured out here. And that's one thing that Jeff Lurie has been good at. Even though they signed Sam Bradford to that deal, they were still like, can we get a franchise quarterback in the draft? And they thought they had that with Carson Wentz. And that's what's most disappointing about this whole thing, because it really is sad to me, because there was so much promise with Carson Wentz, what they gave up and the expectation. And this has gone south and dissolved and just turned into a bad relationship along the way so fast that I don't even really truly have an explanation for it. But I think the key is to find a franchise quarterback, and this organization can get back on track.
John, you're a guy that grew up in Philly, so you've been not only a fan, but you're covering all the teams. Now, if you look at the four teams, would you agree that the Sixers right now are that team that everyone says, okay, the Eagles in 17 were that team? Are the Sixers now that team that we all think it could go to the finals and be that next really team that could bring the banner back home?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Adam. And it's fascinating because we were having the argument, who is bigger in the city, Joel Embiid or Carson Wentz? And obviously, Joel Embiid, you've seen in the NBA, a lot of teams have to take stages. Young players have to learn. They get beat in the playoffs, and then they're like, wow, I got to start getting better at certain things. Like you see Joel, he's now taking that next step with his conditioning in the offseason. He's got trainers. He's got chefs. He's got everything. Kind of like Tom Brady. And you start to realize that when you're young, you're thinking, I can just go out there. I'm good enough to play. But these guys, they suffered bad losses over the last couple of years in the playoffs, and you've seen Joel Embiid grow and take that to the next level. So I don't think there's any doubt, Adam. I think you're right. The Sixers, with the way Daryl Morey came in and made those trades for shooting, you've seen Doc Rivers, the great coach that he is. This is the team in Philadelphia right now that is the hope to bring the next championship here.
So I'm curious, John, because you cover all of the professional teams and some of the college ones. So you maneuver different locker rooms, whereas Adam and I are strictly NFL. I've done it in the past, but it's quite a while since I have done anything other than football. What's it like? I mean, do you approach everything the same? I mean, is working the locker room in an NFL for the Eagles the same as the Sixers or the Flyers?
That's a great question. And it's actually like, in hockey, it's the room. In baseball, right. It's the clubhouse. And in basketball and the Eagles, it's the locker room. That's a great question, because I think so much has changed now with social media, and everybody has a podcast. Everybody has blogs. There's celebrity sites that just want to get pictures of people. So I think athletes are so much more wary of the media now. And there's so much more guarded about saying things, because every little tiny thing is going to be blown up. So I think, and by the way, the agent factor and marketing representatives with agents and players and stuff like that is so much bigger. So I find my thing has always been hockey guys and Canadians are the nicest guys in the history of sports. But even there, when you had the Jeff Carter and Mike Richards era, where they like to go out and have fun, and all of a sudden all the pictures start showing up on social media and stuff like that, and they took some heat for it. I think covering sports has changed so much, because I think athletes tend to go out less now because of everybody having a camera. Everybody in society is a reporter now. Mm-hmm. So it is so much different now. And by the way, before social media, the media was the outlet to the fans where, if a player was being traded or a player wanted to get something off his chest or his story, he had to go through the media for that. And now athletes, they can pretty much send out their own messages through their social media and get their point across. So I think it's changed so much. But hockey guys are the nicest guys on the planet. And baseball players, it's tougher to cover baseball, I think, than the NFL and NBA, because there's 162 games, there's spring training for 30 games, and it's every day. And baseball players get tired of answering the same questions every day. So I think those are the big differences.
John, when you first started, just playing off what you were talking about, how did access change for you? Because when I started covering the league in 2000, the rules are completely different covering the National Football League. It obviously, with the pandemic, it's certainly harder. But the rules have changed how you get access and who you could talk to and when you could talk to them. The Combine, Jeff knows this. When we first went to the Combine in the early 2000s, man, access was phenomenal. And then, boy, the NFL pushed us away in terms of they moved us away from getting really, really close in the old RCA Dome, which has been torn down, which is now just the convention center. The things have changed for us. We still get good access, but it's not quite the same. Has it changed for you covering all four sports?
Obviously this pandemic, I think, is going to change a lot of things because, now during the pandemic, there's no locker room access. There's no face-to-face access. And I wonder when the next time reporters will be allowed in locker rooms, or if that's going to change. Where will they just have guys on the Zoom calls, or will they bring guys outside the locker room? So I think the pandemic is going to change things even more. But you're right, Adam. Things have changed a lot. And I think what teams and leagues are finding out, because all the leagues have their own channel now, they also have their own social media, digital, and teams have their own social media. And I think eventually teams are going to have their own channel. I think you're seeing that teams can control the message more. They can get the message out that they want and frame it the way they want. Just take the NFL. After games last year, you're able to go into the locker room and you're pretty much able to talk to anybody. Now, the team will choose who they make available. So there's fewer side stories from games because you don't have the access to all the players. And I ask you guys, is that going to go back to the way it was before? I don't know.
Tough call.
It's a good question. Yeah. I think we don't want to become a victim of what has been a gift throughout the pandemic of being able to do things like this through Zoom and still be able to maintain some kind of media presence. Just, honestly, the press conferences, the only difference is you're not in person and the questions are limited. It's usually the same 7, 8, or 9 people asking a question. I hope that when this is all over, that nobody says, oh, parts of this was a good idea, let's keep that. Now, an emergency, yeah, sure. There's plenty of times where you probably can look back on a situation and say, man, something huge happened. Maybe Donovan McNabb traded on Easter. If Zoom and the internet was around, I bet you if you asked all the beat reporters, could we just talk to Big Red through Zoom at our houses and be able to get this over with? Everybody would say, yeah, that's a good idea. There's no reason to go in just to talk to Andy, right? In that situation, I feel like you can adapt certain things, but I really do hope, but I worry about it for what you're saying, that they take elements of this and maybe make a certain day of the week that becomes a Zoom day instead of an access day just because. And I hope that's not the case, because you're right. Access has gotten increasingly limited since, and it's still pretty good, but it's increasingly limited since it used to be. Heck, do you remember training camp at Lehigh? You could camp out at the gym where they would work out for 3 hours and talk to guys, and even that's gone. So I really hope they figure out a way to kind of keep the access how it used to be, but it has changed.
John, one thing that Jeff and I went through is in coaching searches, John, you and I have talked, Jeff and I have talked, you've talked, and this coaching search was so unique because they held everything down in Florida. What was that like for you, just covering it? And you've covered other coaching searches from other sports. Were there any differences or similarities to other coaching searches in the other sports that you've covered?
Yeah, I was actually on vacation down in Florida, kind of right next to where this was all going down. And I did take a trip to the airport, and I did see a couple candidates come in.
Of course you did.
What's that?
I said, of course you did.
Yeah, I can't stay away from an airport, especially Palm Beach. But I think this is a real stressful time for reporters because with the Eagles this offseason, you just had a drawn out coaching search where you're trying to find out what's going on. And now you're having a drawn out quarterback trade, the Wentz watch. So it's obviously not going as fast as the Eagles would have hoped. So this was a different thing because I don't think they wanted to fire Doug Peterson. And usually you fire a coach right after the season ends or even before, so you can get a jump on the great candidates that are out there. So I think they got in a little late. And I think there were some candidates that were already kind of 80% into getting jobs. You guys have detailed that great with the Falcons and the Jets. So it was a different search. And who knows? I think if Doug was let go after the season ends, you may have a different head coach because you may have never gotten to Nick Sirianni. I mean, he was on vacation down there in Florida. And I don't know if it was because they got a recommendation after they interviewed Josh McDaniels. I don't know what the timeline was, but he was the last one to interview. So he may not have even gotten an interview. So that would have changed the path of who the Eagles head coach was. But yeah, it was different. But I don't like some fans, everybody, I think today in society, because everything is to the second on Twitter, everything needs to happen right away. But why? Why does a team like the Eagles, why do they have to wrap up a coaching search within a week? I mean, I think it was around 2 weeks or whatever it was. And that's kind of normal for teams, 10 days, whatever. Let them get it right. So I think in today's society, we're just so, if something doesn't happen right away, I think people say, well, this is not going well.
Yeah.
Because the time limit has changed on everything.
Yeah. Because Jeff knows this, the Wentz situation, people want it done. They're so over it. Like, just get it done. We want to get on with our lives. We know some of our listeners are like, one guy said he couldn't sleep because he wants this Wentz thing over with. I mean, John, you grew up here, the fans are crazy. We love it. I mean, they support all of us. It's awesome. But I just one follow-up though. Other sports, Flyers coaching searches. You've been through these. Sixers, obviously, with Doc Rivers. Phillies with Joe Girardi. Are there any similarities or are they just completely different?
I think they're completely different. And as far as media coverage, there's nothing like what the Eagles do because the other searches are covered, but they're just not covered in every detail. People want to know how long a coach met with the Eagles, all this stuff. And so the Eagles are by far number one in our town. And so everything is under a microscope. And I think that's a great point you bring up, because I also think that the Eagles get covered with a lot more anger, maybe not necessarily by media, but fans and everybody. And it's under so much more of a microscope than other teams that I think the Eagles are kind of held to a higher standard in this market than the other teams. You think about the Phillies, right? They haven't made the playoffs in 9 years. 9 years. And you look at the Eagles, they won a Super Bowl 3 years ago. They made the playoffs for 3 straight years with a lot of injuries. This year, the bottom fell out. Everything went wrong. But I mean, a coach is fired after winning a Super Bowl 3 years ago. I think it's only happened one other time in NFL history a coach was fired that quick. So I think the Eagles, because of the passion and even anger, it's almost like politics. There's just so much invested by everybody that the Eagles are judged differently, in my opinion. And the questions that the Eagles get after games and during the week, they're just ramped up more than the other teams, because I'm on so many of the other Zoom calls and they're more intense. The Eagles coverage is so much more intense.
I think you're making a great point, and it's something that I talk about with Adam a lot and friends of mine. As someone who has been a reporter and in sports radio and TV with you there at NBC or CSN at the time, I agree with you. And people could say I'm a little bit hypocritical because when Adam and I went and started this business that's devoted totally to Eagles coverage, but that's what we do. But outside of beat reporters, I do think that our collective media in Philadelphia hyper focuses so much. And so when I say collective media, I mean really the people who are in charge of like content and ideas, programming, so hyper focused on the Eagles that the other teams are drowned out in a way that's not really reflective of the common fans' zest or love for all four teams. I think it's talked about way too much. I think the fact that you said the Phillies haven't made the playoffs in 9 years, I know in New York, that would be the dominant discussion, or at least worth an hour of a 4-hour show, whether it's a TV or radio or anything. But here it's just always, and I always think it's like the same topic regurgitated for different days in a row. And I would love for us to get out of that, but I almost feel like we collectively and lazily just go back to that because it's the number one team. But it feels like here it's the number one team, and then there's 3 number 4 teams. It's like the Phillies rotation sometimes. You have a number 1 guy and 3, 4, or 5s, right? But it's not really like that for the fans. I think that the Flyers, Sixers, and Phillies hold more water than maybe our collective media understands here. And I would love to see that change, even though what we do is dedicated all to Eagles. But I think it would just be better for our fan base, for our collective media, our discussions overall, if it was a little bit more balanced.
Yeah, and I often wonder, and you guys, you know this too, I don't know if it's chicken or the egg it seems like Philadelphia fan we all have it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, if I'm using the right term, where it's like, okay, what are we known for in America? Okay, we're known for being the most intense, rabid, passionate fan base. It's almost like we perpetuate that. We want to say, okay, we're known for the booing. All right, well, let's play that up then, because that is our thing, Philadelphia. And then I think the way the media covers the teams, but mostly the Eagles, I think a lot of us say, well, it seems like the fans are really fired up and upset about this. And then I think we add a little bit more juice and intensity to our questions to the Eagles because of that. And I don't know if it's because of the media or the fans or just our city of Philly. Because, I grew up here. We do have a little bit of a chip on our shoulder, being kind of the city that's, caught between New York and Washington, sometimes forgotten about. So we do have that chip on our shoulder. But I think sometimes we just perpetuate this impression or what we're known for. And sometimes I think it works against us as a town.
It's almost like, I've said this before, it's like, I liken it to like fishermen throwing chum in the water and the sharks come and eat it. And then they're all like, oh my God, look at them eating that. Can you see they're eating it? Why are they eating it like that? As they continue to shovel the chum out there, it becomes like you said, the self-fulfilling prophecy. Let me quickly stop and just remind everybody hold that thought, John. Just want to remind everyone to download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app. Now use the promo code ITB to get all your sign-up bonuses. That's promo code ITB to get all your sign-up bonuses on the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app. Go ahead.
And the thing I just wanted to say also is, and Adam and I have talked about this, the fascinating thing with Philadelphia, where it's almost sometimes the personality of somebody and the way they play or the way they coach is bigger than the results. Kind of like the whole Buddy Ryan versus Andy Reid thing, where I love Buddy, but you know what? He never won a playoff game. Andy Reid is a Hall of Fame coach. And I know he didn't win the big one in Philly. He had the team every single year in contention for the most part. And it's like the Nick Sirianni press conference, where we don't even look at the history of Charlie Manuel, Doug Peterson, Andy Reid, maybe not having the best first impression in a press conference. And that's a different situation for a coordinator. That's a completely different situation, taking questions from people you can't even see over Zoom. So I think sometimes we value the attitude more than the results. And I've always wondered that about my city. I love my city. I love the passion, but sometimes I just think we need to take a deep breath sometimes and think about it a little more up here than in the heart. And I'm guilty of it too sometimes.
Good stuff, man. When we did when we talked to you, John, today, we didn't know where we were going to go here. We had an idea, and I love the way that we took this thing. We appreciate it. It's some good stuff. I love the way you framed the fan base. You and I have lived here our whole lives, and the fandom has really not changed in terms of the passion will never change. We know that because of social media, and as you were saying, players being involved in it, and everyone could give their feeling on it, whether it's politics or whether it's sports. People want to be able to say and give their feelings at the same time. It's really remarkable. We live in a time where there's not a lot of filter. that's kind of where we're at now, whether it's a message board, whether it's on social media. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And I've often asked this question sometimes on Eagles Sundays. I've always wondered, sometimes are we happier that the Cowboys lost or that the Eagles won? You know, like I find that.
Can it be 50-50?
Honestly, it's crazy. The hate we build up sometimes for other teams. And I get it. As I said, I'm from here. But you know, it's like what's going on with Howie Roseman right now. Look, I get it. Howie has not had the best draft picks over the last couple years, but Howie did take Chip Kelly's mess and turn it around miraculously so quickly by dumping guys that were quote unquote Chip Kelly guys that didn't give 100% production and effort. Then he traded up to draft a quarterback that we all thought could be the franchise quarterback. So it's amazing sometimes how we give up on people quickly. And they've had the track record. Howie legitimately has the track record of turning around the Eagles franchise and having a fantastic year or two to get the team to the Super Bowl. And Doug and everybody did a great job. And then it's like, wow, we bail on them pretty darn quickly.
Yeah. And parallel to that, to you know, sometimes actions cause reactions. The owner fired the coach who, as you just mentioned, won a Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Now there's a lot to it, but the bottom line is the fan just sees, well, the owner just fired the coach who brought us our only Super Bowl. So who's saying we're the ones that are reacting? It's almost like they're just as bad as we are, right? I mean, you can draw the parallel there. And I think a lot of fans they've not known how to react because everything they've known about patience, and you just said, just like almost seemingly went out the window with that. It's just, look, I think we can all agree on this. This is a crossroads time for the Eagles, and they haven't been at one of these in quite a while where you're just not sure which path they're about to travel down. And I think that makes, for us at least, kind of fascinating.
I totally agree with you. And it's interesting because you wonder if they should take the approach that the Browns maybe did and the Sam Hinkie approach, where you just say, you know what, we're going to be in salary cap hell this year. Let's just tear the whole thing down and get a whole bunch of draft picks and just rebuild this thing with youth. And as Sam Hinkie said, the number of lottery tickets, if you can keep increasing the number of lottery tickets you have, you increase your chances. So I wonder if it's best to just tear this thing down and try to get as many draft picks. I'm talking about trading veterans. I'm talking about just gutting it and building for the future.
Yeah, it's Sean. It's funny you say that. I suggested to Jeff on one of our shows recently that the owner really should say to the general manager, Howie Roseman, listen, we are where we are. We just changed the head coach. Let's rebuild this thing, not from the ground up. But there's some good players left, but they have an older roster, a bunch of positions. Why not flip this thing? As you said, John, I agree with you. Trade them away. Look, it's going to be a tough offseason anyway. Some guys who they'd rather not walk away from, they're going to have to. And just get younger and suck it up. Get, as you were mentioning about Sam Hinkie said. But in this case, there's no lottery, but you want to get as many draft picks and lean on your personnel staff and let them help you get it right. And to me, that's the way they should do it. I really do think they should rebuild, but I don't know if the owner would go along with that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I think they should rebuild as well.
All right, Johnny, we really appreciate it, man. It was great for you to drop by. We decided not to embarrass you. I'm not going to ask any wrestling questions or how you got your Johnny at the airport image. We'll save that for the next appearance on ITB. All right. We'll spare you.
I'm going to put a cat filter over my face so that I can evade answering these questions.
That's too funny.
Unbelievable. Our country, you got to love it.
You got to love it. I don't know if you saw the recent one. Some guy was doing it upside down. Some politician was upside down.
Hey, by the way, we are all older people. So I think youth is definitely served on these platforms because we can figure this stuff out quicker.
Exactly.
I would say so. All right, John, thanks a lot. Really appreciate you stopping by. Really had a great time. As Adam said, great conversation, and we'll catch up with you again. All right.
And guys, I listen to your podcast every week and keep up the great work. I think you guys cover the birds in an awesome way. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it very much. All right. That's going to be it for this edition of Inside the Birds TV. Jeff Mosher, Adam Kaplan, and of course for Johnny Clark. Want to wish everybody a great day and have a great weekend. Thanks everyone for watching.